Two bear cubs, buried up to neck in mud, was crying. What this human baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning mist hung low over Pine Valley as Olivia Morgan stepped onto her porch, breathing in the crisp mountain air. Her cabin, nestled at the edge of the wilderness, had been her sanctuary for the past 3 years. The soft gurgling of the nearby creek mingled with bird song, creating a peaceful melody that soothed her soul. Olivia's daughter, little Emma, just 13 months old, played with wooden blocks on a quilted blanket beside her, occasionally babbling and pointing at butterflies that danced in the morning light. Olivia watched her daughter with a mix of love and sadness. Since losing her husband in a climbing accident last winter, these quiet moments with Emma were what kept her going. The child had her father's curious eyes, always watching, always observing the world with wonder. Emma couldn't speak yet, but she communicated in her own way, with gestures and sounds that Olivia had learned to understand. This morning, though, Emma seemed unusually restless. She kept turning her head toward the dense forest that started just beyond their garden, her tiny hands reaching out as if trying to grasp something invisible. Olivia followed her daughter's gaze but saw nothing unusual among the towering pines. "What do you see, sweetheart?" Olivia whispered, crouching beside Emma. The baby gurgled and pointed more insistently toward a particularly thick cluster of trees. Suddenly, a sound broke through the morning quiet. Not the familiar chatter of squirrels or songs of birds, but something different. Something wrong. A high-pitched whimper, followed by a desperate, mournful cry that sent shivers down Olivia's spine. "Stay here, Emma," she said, knowing her daughter couldn't possibly understand, but saying it anyway. She placed a protective circle of cushions around the baby and stepped toward the edge of the porch, straining her ears. The crying came again, louder this time. It wasn't human, Olivia was certain of that, but it carried the unmistakable tone of fear and pain that transcends species. Whatever was making that sound was suffering. Emma began to rock back and forth on her blanket, her face scrunched in concentration. Before Olivia could react, the baby had pushed aside one of the cushions and was crawling with surprising speed toward the porch steps. "Emma, no!" Olivia lunged for her daughter, but Emma had already reached the bottom step, her determined little body moving with purpose toward the source of the cries. Heart pounding, Olivia scooped up her daughter and held her close. Emma squirmed and pointed, tears welling in her eyes as the cries from the forest grew more desperate. "You want me to help them, don't you?" Olivia whispered, suddenly understanding her daughter's urgency. She glanced at her phone on the porch table, wondering if she should call someone. The ranger station, perhaps. But who would believe her about mysterious cries in the woods? With Emma securely in her arms, Olivia hesitated at the forest's edge. The morning mist still clung to the trees, turning the familiar woods into something mysterious and slightly threatening. The crying had stopped momentarily, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Then it came again, weaker this time, as if whatever was making the sound was losing strength. Emma whimpered in response, her tiny body tensing in Olivia's arms. "Okay, baby girl," Olivia whispered, tightening her grip on her daughter. "Let's go see." She stepped into the forest, following a narrow deer trail that wound between the trees. The ground was damp from overnight rain, and Olivia's boots sank slightly with each step. Emma had gone quiet, her eyes wide as she watched the dappled sunlight filter through the canopy above. The crying grew louder as they walked deeper into the woods. Olivia's heart raced, her maternal instincts on high alert. What if it was a wounded predator? What if she was walking straight into danger with her baby in her arms? But Emma seemed completely unafraid. She leaned forward in her mother's embrace, pointing ahead with growing excitement. The trail curved around a massive fallen oak, and suddenly Olivia stopped dead in her tracks. There, in a small clearing ahead, lay the source of the cries. A wolf pup, no, 2 wolf pups, trapped in what appeared to be an old hunter's pit, partially filled with mud and rainwater. Only their heads were visible above the muck, their tiny bodies completely submerged. Their gray fur was slick with mud, their eyes wide with terror as they struggled weakly to free themselves. Olivia gasped, instinctively stepping back. Wolves. Where there were pups, there would be parents. Protective, dangerous parents. Emma made a soft cooing sound, reaching toward the trapped pups with such yearning that Olivia felt her heart twist. The pups, hearing the human sound, fell silent, their ears flattening in fear. "We need to go, Emma," Olivia whispered, turning to retreat. "We'll call the rangers from home." But as she turned, a low growl stopped her cold. There, emerging from the shadows on the other side of the clearing, was a massive gray wolf. Its amber eyes fixed on Olivia and Emma, teeth slightly bared in a silent warning. The mother wolf had returned to find her babies, and now faced the humans who stood between her and her trapped pups. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. Olivia could hear nothing but her own heartbeat thundering in her ears as she clutched Emma tighter to her chest. The wolf's fur was matted in places, with small scratches visible on her muzzle. She had been searching, Olivia realized, frantically searching for her missing children. "It's okay," Olivia whispered, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "We're not here to hurt them." The wolf's ears twitched at the sound of her voice. Its amber eyes never left Olivia's face, assessing, calculating. The pups in the pit had begun crying again, their weak whimpers growing more desperate at the sight of their mother. Emma suddenly squirmed in Olivia's arms, reaching toward the wolf with curious fingers. Before Olivia could adjust her grip, Emma had dropped her favorite teething ring, a small wooden circle with colorful beads, onto the forest floor. It rolled across the damp leaves, coming to rest halfway between Olivia and the wolf. The mother wolf flinched, taking a step backward. Then, cautiously, she lowered her head to sniff the strange object, her eyes still fixed warily on the humans. "We should back away slowly," Olivia thought, but her legs wouldn't move. Emma was babbling now, making the soft, insistent sound she always made when she wanted something, when she wanted to help. Behind them, the sound of branches breaking made Olivia jump. She turned her head slightly, keeping the wolf in her peripheral vision, and saw a flash of movement in the trees. Another wolf, larger, with darker fur, was circling around them. The father, Olivia realized with growing dread. They were now trapped between 2 adult wolves and their struggling pups. "Oh, God," she breathed, her mind racing. What would Daniel have done? Her late husband had been a wildlife photographer, spending months tracking and observing animals in their natural habitats. He would have known exactly what to do in this situation. The male wolf emerged fully from the trees now, his posture rigid with tension. Unlike his mate, he showed no hesitation, advancing slowly toward Olivia and Emma with deliberate steps. "Daniel, help me," Olivia whispered, a prayer to a ghost. As if in answer, a memory surfaced. Daniel sitting by their fireplace, describing how he'd once encountered a protective mother bear. "I sang to her," he'd said, smiling at Olivia's disbelief. "Low and gentle, so she knew I wasn't a threat. Animals respond to energy more than anything else." Without thinking, Olivia began to hum, soft and low, a lullaby she sang to Emma every night. The same one Daniel had hummed to her belly when Emma was still growing inside her. The male wolf paused, ears pricked forward in confusion. Emma, recognizing the familiar melody, joined in with her own babbling version. The combined sound, mother and daughter, humming and babbling in harmony, filled the small clearing. The trapped pups had gone quiet, their frightened eyes darting between their parents and the strange creatures making those soothing sounds. The mother wolf had moved closer to her mate now, their shoulders touching as they stood together, a united front. Slowly, never breaking her gentle humming, Olivia knelt and placed Emma on a soft patch of moss near the base of a tree. She placed a quick kiss on her daughter's head before straightening up. "Stay, baby," she whispered. "Just stay." Emma, surprisingly, didn't protest. She sat perfectly still on the moss, watching with wide, serious eyes as her mother took a cautious step toward the pit where the wolf pups struggled. The adult wolves growled in unison, a rumbling warning that vibrated through the air. Olivia froze, her hands slightly raised in front of her. "I just want to help them," she said softly, knowing the wolves couldn't understand her words, but hoping they might sense her intention. "They'll die if they stay trapped." The mother wolf whined, taking a half step forward before her mate nudged her back. They were communicating somehow, deciding whether this strange human was a threat or possibly, against all odds, a savior. Olivia's mind raced. The pit was at least 6 feet deep, with steep, muddy sides that would be impossible for the pups to climb. Even if she could reach them, how would she lift them out without getting stuck herself? And would the parent wolves allow her anywhere near their children? A flash of color caught her eye. There, half buried in the fallen leaves near the edge of the pit, was what looked like an old piece of camping equipment. A section of nylon rope, weathered but still strong, tied to a rusted metal stake. Someone's forgotten tent line, perhaps, or part of the trap that had created this pit in the first place. Hope flared within her. If she could reach the rope without startling the wolves. Emma chose that moment to start crawling, not toward Olivia as expected, but toward the edge of the pit. The wolves tensed, the male taking a threatening step forward. "Emma, no!" Olivia lunged for her daughter, grabbing her just before she reached the pit's edge. The sudden movement startled the wolves, who both snarled and advanced several paces. Clutching Emma to her chest, Olivia stepped back, bumping into the trunk of a massive pine tree. She was cornered now, the wolves before her, the tree behind, and no clear path to escape. Emma, seemingly oblivious to the danger, continued reaching toward the pit, making urgent sounds. "What is it, baby?" Olivia whispered, following her daughter's gaze. That's when she noticed something she'd missed before. A narrow ledge of packed earth about halfway down the pit's wall. If she could reach it. The wolves were still advancing, their patience wearing thin. In moments, they would attack. Olivia was certain of it. She had to act now or never. With her heart hammering against her ribs, Olivia did the unthinkable. She knelt and placed Emma back on the moss, then quickly removed her jacket and wrapped it around her daughter like a makeshift barrier. "I love you," she whispered. Then, before she could reconsider, Olivia turned and dove toward the edge of the pit. She heard the wolves' startled growls behind her, felt the rush of air as one of them lunged. But Olivia was already sliding down the muddy wall of the pit, her hands grasping for the ledge she'd spotted. For one terrible moment, she thought she'd misjudged, that she would plunge straight into the muddy water below, trapping herself with the pups. Then her fingers found purchase on the narrow shelf of earth. She clung there, half in and half out of the pit, mud soaking through her clothes. Just below her, the wolf pups whimpered, their small heads barely visible above the muck. "I've got you," she gasped, stretching one arm down toward the nearest pup. "I've got you." The air above her head filled with growls. Looking up, Olivia saw both adult wolves at the pit's edge, teeth bared, preparing to leap down after her. Her body tensed, bracing for the pain of powerful jaws. But the attack never came. Instead, a high-pitched squeal cut through the tension. Emma, still wrapped in Olivia's jacket, had somehow freed her arms and was waving them frantically, drawing the wolves' attention. The baby wasn't crying or screaming in fear. Instead, she was doing something Olivia had never seen before. Emma was laughing, a full, joyous belly laugh that echoed through the clearing. And as she laughed, she pointed repeatedly at the pups, then at her mother, as if explaining the situation to the bewildered wolves. The adult wolves hesitated, their aggressive posture softening slightly in confusion. They looked from Emma to Olivia, then to their struggling pups, as if trying to piece together this bizarre puzzle. In that moment of distraction, Olivia managed to reach the first pup. Its fur was slick with mud, making it difficult to grip, but she finally managed to get her hands under its front legs. With a grunt of effort, she lifted the small creature up to the ledge beside her. The pup was heavier than she expected, its waterlogged fur adding to its weight. It lay on the ledge, barely moving, its breathing shallow and rapid. Olivia knew she had to work quickly. Both pups were exhausted and likely suffering from hypothermia. She reached for the second pup, stretching her arm until her shoulder ached. Her fingers brushed against wet fur once, twice, but couldn't get a solid grip. The mud was too slippery, the pup too weak to help. "Come on," she whispered, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "Come on, little one." A shower of dirt and pebbles suddenly rained down from above. Olivia looked up, expecting to see the wolves finally attacking, but what she saw instead left her speechless. The mother wolf was digging frantically at the edge of the pit, her powerful paws sending cascades of earth toward Olivia. But rather than threatening her, the wolf was widening the edge, creating a gentler slope down to the ledge where Olivia clung. Understanding dawned. The wolf wasn't attacking, she was helping. With renewed determination, Olivia made another attempt to reach the second pup. This time, her fingers closed around its scruff. With the last of her strength, she pulled the pup up onto the ledge beside its sibling. Both pups lay motionless now, their small bodies heaving with labored breaths. The mother wolf whined anxiously from above, pawing at the edge of the pit as if trying to reach down to her children. "I'll get them to you," Olivia promised, though the task seemed impossible. The ledge was several feet below the rim of the pit, and the walls were too slippery to climb while carrying two wolf pups. Then she remembered the rope. If she could somehow reach it. A shadow fell across her face. Looking up again, Olivia gasped. The male wolf had moved to the section of the pit nearest to where the rope lay half buried in the leaves. With deliberate movements, he was pawing at the ground, uncovering more of the rope, as if he had read her mind. "That's it," Olivia breathed. "The rope. We need the rope." As if in answer, Emma started babbling again, patting her hands on the ground and pointing at the rope. The male wolf looked at the baby, then back at the rope, continuing to dig until a good length of it was exposed. But neither wolf could grab the rope to bring it to Olivia. The three adults, 2 wolf, 1 human, seemed to reach an impasse, all of them aware of what needed to happen but unable to bridge the gap between intention and action. Then, from somewhere in the distance, came a new sound. The rumble of an engine, growing steadily louder. The wolves' heads snapped up, ears pricked forward in alarm. The mother gave a low, urgent bark to her mate, who responded by grabbing Emma's teething ring in his mouth and backing away toward the trees. He was preparing to flee and wanted his mate to follow. "No," Olivia cried, panic rising in her throat. "Please, don't go. The pups need you." The mother wolf hesitated, torn between the instinct to flee from approaching humans and the desperate need to save her children. She paced at the edge of the pit, whining anxiously. The engine sound grew louder, accompanied now by the crunch of tires on the narrow forest trail. Whoever was coming would reach the clearing in minutes. Olivia's mind raced with conflicting emotions. Relief at the prospect of rescue. Fear for the wolf family that might be shot on sight if discovered. "Emma," she called, trying to keep her voice steady despite her precarious position on the ledge. "Stay where you are, baby." But Emma had other ideas. With surprising dexterity for a 13-month-old, she had wriggled completely free of the jacket and was now crawling determinedly toward the partially exposed rope. The male wolf, still clutching the teething ring, watched her with what almost looked like curiosity. Olivia held her breath as her baby daughter reached the rope. Emma grabbed it with both hands and, with considerable effort, began pulling it toward the pit. The rope, tangled among leaves and twigs, moved only inches at first. The engine cut off suddenly, replaced by the sound of a car door slamming. "Hello," a deep voice called. "Anyone out here?" The mother wolf growled softly, backing away from the pit's edge, but not fleeing. Her eyes remained fixed on her pups, who had begun to stir weakly on the ledge beside Olivia. "Here," Olivia shouted. "We're over here. I need help." Footsteps approached rapidly, crunching through the underbrush. The wolves retreated further but still didn't run, hovering at the edge of the clearing as a tall figure emerged from between the trees. "Olivia?" "What the hell?" The voice belonged to Jackson Reeves, her nearest neighbor, a gruff veteran who lived a mile down the road. He stopped abruptly as he took in the scene. Olivia half in the pit, Emma on the ground with a rope, and two adult wolves watching from the tree line. Jackson immediately reached for something at his hip, a hunting knife or gun. Olivia couldn't tell which. "No," she shouted. "Don't hurt them. They're just trying to save their babies." Jackson froze, his hand still at his hip, eyes darting between Olivia, Emma, and the wolves. "You're telling me those wolves aren't threatening you?" "They're scared," Olivia explained quickly. "Their pups are trapped in this pit. I'm trying to get them out, but I need help. Please, Jackson." Jackson's weathered face registered disbelief, but he cautiously moved closer, keeping a wary eye on the wolves. "I came looking when you didn't answer your phone. Claire at the store was worried when you didn't pick up your grocery order." He knelt beside Emma, gently pulling her back from the pit's edge. "Jesus, Olivia, what were you thinking bringing your baby out here?" "I heard them crying," Olivia said, her arms beginning to shake from the strain of holding herself on the narrow ledge. "We can debate my parenting later. Right now, I need that rope." Jackson surveyed the situation with a critical eye, then nodded. With swift, efficient movements, he retrieved the rope from where Emma had been pulling it. "What's your plan here?" "Lower the rope so I can tie the pups to it, then pull them up. They're too weak to climb out themselves." Jackson shook his head but did as she asked, uncoiling the rope and dropping one end down to her. "And how exactly are you planning to get out? That mud looks at least 4 feet deep." Olivia hadn't thought that far ahead. One problem at a time. Her fingers, stiff with cold and coated with mud, fumbled with the rope. Finally, she managed to create a loose harness around the first pup, securing it as gently as possible. "Ready," she called up to Jackson. "Pull slowly." The pup whimpered as it was lifted from the ledge, its small body swinging slightly as Jackson carefully raised it. The mother wolf darted forward a few paces, then stopped, conflicted. As the first pup cleared the edge of the pit, Jackson carefully laid it on the ground. The mother wolf rushed forward immediately, caution forgotten in her desperation to reach her child. Jackson backed away quickly, eyes wide, as the wolf began frantically licking the mud from her pup's fur. "I'll be damned," he muttered. The second pup was smaller and even weaker than the first. Olivia's hands shook as she secured the rope around its tiny body, terrified of causing further injury. By the time she called for Jackson to pull it up, her teeth were chattering from cold, and her muscles burned from the strain of balancing on the narrow ledge. The second pup was reunited with its mother, who now had both children huddled against her, continuing to clean them with determined licks. The male wolf had finally dropped Emma's teething ring and joined his family, his massive body curled protectively around them. "Now, for you," Jackson said, lowering the rope again. Olivia grasped it gratefully, but as she tried to pull herself up, the ledge beneath her feet crumbled. With a startled cry, she plunged into the deep mud below. The cold was shocking, the thick mud instantly closing around her body like concrete. Panic flared as she struggled to keep her head above the surface. "Jackson! Hold on!" he shouted, pulling harder on the rope. But Olivia could feel herself sinking, the mud too thick and her strength too depleted to fight against it. Emma began to wail, a piercing cry of fear that cut through the clearing. At the sound, the mother wolf's head snapped up. She looked from her pups to the struggling human, then back to her pups. Then, to Olivia's astonishment, the wolf gently nudged her pups toward her mate and bounded back to the edge of the pit. She paced frantically, watching as Olivia sank deeper, mud now reaching her chest. "The rope's not enough," Jackson called, his voice tight with strain. "You're too stuck. I'm going to have to get something from my truck to pull you out." "Hurry!" Olivia gasped, fighting to keep panic from overwhelming her. Every movement seemed to pull her deeper into the mud. Jackson hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave Emma with wolves nearby. "What about, take her with you?" Olivia managed. "Please, Jackson." He nodded, scooping up the now hysterical Emma and retreating quickly toward the trail. 2 minutes, he promised. "Hold on for 2 minutes." The moment they disappeared into the trees, the mother wolf made her decision. With a powerful leap, she jumped down into the pit, landing with a splash beside Olivia. Olivia froze, certain the wolf had come to attack her now that Emma was gone. Instead, the animal began to dig at the mud around Olivia's trapped body, her strong paws creating space where there had been none. Stunned, Olivia could only watch as the wolf worked furiously, ignoring the mud that caked her fur. When the wolf paused, looking at her expectantly, Olivia understood. "Together," she whispered, and began to push with her legs while the wolf continued to dig. Gradually, Olivia felt the suction of the mud lessening. With one final heave, she pulled herself free enough to grasp the rope more securely. The wolf backed away then, watching as Olivia started to climb. It was slow, agonizing work. The rope cut into Olivia's hands, and her mud-soaked clothes weighed her down like lead. Several times, she nearly lost her grip, saved only by her desperate determination to return to Emma. The wolf remained in the pit, occasionally pushing at Olivia's feet as if trying to boost her upward. Their eyes met once during the climb, amber animal eyes meeting human brown, and Olivia could have sworn she saw understanding there. Two mothers, both fighting for their children's futures. When Olivia finally reached the top and rolled onto solid ground, she lay there gasping, too exhausted to move. The wolf was still in the pit, looking up at her with what could only be described as expectation. Understanding, Olivia lowered the rope once more. "Your turn," she said hoarsely. The wolf regarded the rope, then backed up a few paces and took a running leap at the pit wall. Her claws scrabbled at the mud, finding just enough purchase to propel her upward. With one powerful surge, she cleared the edge, landing neatly on the ground beside Olivia. Without pause, the wolf shook herself vigorously, spraying mud in all directions, then trotted back to her family. The male wolf greeted her with a gentle nuzzle, while the pups, already looking more alert, squeaked with joy at their mother's return. "You're welcome," Olivia whispered, a tired smile spreading across her face. The sound of approaching footsteps announced Jackson's return. He emerged from the trees carrying a coil of heavy-duty tow cable, and stopped dead at the sight of Olivia covered in mud but very much out of the pit. "How did you—" he began, then noticed the wolf family at the edge of the clearing. "Never mind, let's get you and Emma home before anything else crazy happens." Emma had calmed somewhat, though her cheeks were still wet with tears. When she saw her mother, she reached out with a happy gurgle. "Thank you, Jackson," Olivia said, taking her daughter with mud-caked arms. "You saved us." "Seems to me you had help," he replied gruffly, nodding toward the wolves. The family had begun to retreat deeper into the forest, the male leading the way, while the mother gently herded her weakened pups. Before disappearing into the undergrowth, the mother wolf paused, turning to look back at Olivia. Their eyes met one final time across the clearing. A moment of connection between two species that should have been enemies but had chosen cooperation instead. Then the wolf was gone, melting into the shadows with her family. "You're not going to believe me when I tell you what happened," Olivia said to Jackson as they made their way back toward the trail. "Try me," he replied, surprising her. "My grandfather used to tell stories about the wolves in these mountains, said they were different from others, smarter, more aware." He shrugged, embarrassed. "Thought it was just old man talk until today." Emma, snuggled against her mother's chest, suddenly pointed back toward the forest and laughed, that same joyous sound that had momentarily stopped the wolves from attacking. In her tiny hand was her wooden teething ring, somehow recovered during the chaos. Olivia stared at it, then at her daughter's innocent face. "She knew," she whispered. "Somehow she knew they needed help." Jackson said nothing, but his silence was thoughtful rather than dismissive. As they reached his truck, Olivia cast one last glance toward the forest. For an instant, she thought she saw a pair of amber eyes watching from between the trees. But then they were gone, like morning mist burned away by the sun. The drive back to Olivia's cabin was quiet, both adults lost in their own thoughts. Emma, exhausted by the morning's adventures, had fallen asleep, the wooden teething ring still clutched in her small hand. "I should report that pit," Jackson said finally. "It's probably an old hunting trap, illegal these days." Olivia nodded, though a part of her feared what might happen if forest rangers came to investigate. Would they find the wolf family? Would they try to relocate them? As if reading her thoughts, Jackson added, "Could wait a few days, though, give them time to find a new den, somewhere safer." "Thank you," Olivia said simply. They pulled up to her cabin, the familiar sight of her porch and garden suddenly precious in a way it hadn't been just hours before. Near death has a way of sharpening appreciation for the ordinary. "I'll bring by some soup later," Jackson offered as he helped her from the truck, "and maybe fix that loose step while I'm at it." Olivia smiled, surprised by this new, gentler side of her normally gruff neighbor. "We'd like that." Alone again, Olivia bathed herself and Emma, washing away the physical remnants of their ordeal. As she tucked her daughter into bed for her afternoon nap, she noticed something strange about the wooden teething ring. small indentations that hadn't been there before. Teeth marks, she realized. Wolf teeth. A shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with fear. It was as if the morning's events had awakened something dormant within her, a connection to the natural world that transcended the boundaries between species. She placed the teething ring in Emma's toy basket and went to the window. From here, she could see the edge of the forest where their adventure had begun. Was the wolf family safe now? Were the pups recovering from their ordeal? Questions without answers. Yet Olivia felt a strange certainty that they were fine, that the bond forged in those desperate moments somehow connected them still. Outside, the afternoon sun filtered through the pine branches, casting dappled shadows across her garden. A deer emerged cautiously from the trees, followed by 2 spotted fawns. They paused at the edge of her yard, regarding the cabin with alert but unthreatened curiosity. Olivia watched, barely breathing, as the small family browsed peacefully on her lawn. 2 weeks ago, she would have shooed them away from her vegetable garden. Now, she simply observed, a witness to their wild life, intersecting briefly with her own. The deer raised her head suddenly, ears flicking toward the forest. Olivia followed her gaze and saw it, a flash of gray moving parallel to the tree line. The wolf, keeping pace with the deer family but making no move to attack. Was it the same wolf? Olivia couldn't be sure from this distance, but something in the way it moved, purposeful yet restrained, made her think it was the mother. The deer, strangely, showed no fear. She watched the wolf pass, then calmly returned to grazing with her fawns. Olivia stepped back from the window, heart pounding with the strangeness of what she'd just witnessed. Predator and prey, coexisting in an impossible harmony. In her crib, Emma stirred and made a small contented sound. Olivia went to her daughter, brushing a finger over her soft cheek. What had Emma sensed that morning? What had she understood that adult humans, with all their supposed wisdom, had forgotten how to perceive? As darkness fell over Pine Valley, Olivia sat on her porch with a steaming mug of tea, listening to the night sounds of the forest. Somewhere out there, a wolf howled, a long, melodious call that echoed between the mountains. Without thinking, Olivia began to hum the same lullaby she'd used in the clearing. The tune drifted into the night, mingling with the wolf's song in perfect, impossible harmony. The weeks that followed held a strange new rhythm for Olivia and Emma. Each morning they would wake to find small gifts at the edge of their property. A perfect pine cone, a particularly beautiful feather, once even a rabbit, freshly killed but untouched otherwise. Olivia always removed these offerings before Emma could see them, especially the rabbit, but she understood their meaning. The wolves were thanking them, in their own wild way. Jackson visited regularly now, his initial gruffness softening into something like friendship. He brought tools to fix the loose boards on her porch, fresh vegetables from his garden, and stories about the mountains that had been his home for 6 decades. My grandfather called them the Shadow People, he told Olivia one evening as they sat watching Emma play with wooden blocks on a quilt. Said the wolves around here weren't just animals. Said they remembered things, passed down knowledge through generations. That sounds like a fairy tale, Olivia said, though without the skepticism she would have felt before. Jackson shrugged his broad shoulders. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. All I know is what I saw that day in the clearing. He sipped his coffee thoughtfully. There's a storm coming tonight, big one, according to the weather service. You two be okay out here? Olivia nodded. We've weathered storms before. But as Jackson drove away and dark clouds began to gather over the mountains, Olivia felt a prickle of unease. The air was too still, the forest too quiet. Even the birds had gone silent, as if holding their breath before something momentous. By dusk, the storm had arrived in full force. Rain lashed against the cabin windows, driven by howling winds that made the old timbers creak and groan. Emma, usually a sound sleeper, was restless, whimpering in her crib as thunder crashed overhead. Olivia brought her daughter into her own bed, cradling the baby against her chest, as she had on countless stormy nights before. But Emma wouldn't settle. She kept turning her head toward the window, making the same insistent sounds she'd made that day in the clearing. "It's just a storm, baby," Olivia soothed, stroking Emma's fine hair. "Just rain and wind." A particularly violent gust rattled the windows, and the lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Olivia sighed. Power outages were common during mountain storms, but they were always unnerving, especially with a baby. She reached for her phone to use as a flashlight, only to find the battery nearly dead. Of course, she'd forgotten to charge it again. "Candles it is," she murmured, carefully setting Emma on the bed surrounded by pillows. "Don't move, sweetheart. Mommy will be right back." The cabin felt different in the darkness. Familiar shapes transformed into looming shadows. Olivia fumbled her way to the kitchen drawer where she kept emergency supplies, retrieving candles and matches by touch. As she lit the first candle, the warm glow pushed back the darkness, casting dancing shadows on the walls. A sound at the front door made her freeze. Not the wind, not the rain, something else. A scratching, deliberate and purposeful. Olivia's heart pounded as she set down the candle and moved cautiously toward the door. Through the small window, she could see nothing but darkness and the silver streaks of rain. The scratching came again, more insistent this time. "Jackson?" she called, though she knew it couldn't be her neighbor. He would knock, not scratch, and certainly wouldn't be out in such a storm without good reason. A low, rumbling sound answered her. Not quite a growl, not quite a whine, but something in between. Olivia felt the hairs on her arms rise. From the bedroom, Emma began to cry. Not her usual fussy sounds, but something more urgent, almost frantic. The scratching at the door became more vigorous, accompanied now by a high-pitched whimper that cut through the storm noise with eerie clarity. With trembling fingers, Olivia reached for the deadbolt. Every instinct screamed at her to leave the door locked, to retreat to her bedroom and wait out the night with Emma, safe in her arms. But something stronger than instinct pushed her forward, the same inexplicable certainty she'd felt in the clearing. She turned the lock and pulled the door open a crack, bracing herself against the howling wind. There on her porch, soaked to the skin and shivering violently, stood a child. Olivia gasped, pulling the door open wider. The child, a girl, perhaps 6 or 7 years old, stared up at her with wide, frightened eyes. Her dark hair was plastered to her pale face, and her clothes, thin pajamas, completely inadequate for the weather, clung to her small frame. "Oh my God," Olivia breathed, immediately reaching for the girl. "Come inside, quickly." The child hesitated, glancing over her shoulder into the storm-lashed darkness. Then, with obvious reluctance, she stepped across the threshold. Olivia closed the door against the wind and knelt before the shivering child. "Are you hurt? What's your name? Where are your parents?" The girl said nothing, only stared at Olivia with those enormous eyes. Unusual eyes, Olivia realized. An amber color that seemed almost to glow in the candlelight. Emma's cries from the bedroom grew more insistent. "That's my daughter," Olivia explained gently. "I need to check on her. Will you come with me?" She held out her hand, and after a moment's hesitation the girl took it. Her fingers were ice cold and trembling. In the bedroom, Emma had managed to push aside the pillows Olivia had arranged and was sitting up, tears streaming down her flushed cheeks. When she saw Olivia enter with the strange child, her cries stopped abruptly. "It's okay, Emma," Olivia said, lifting her daughter. "We have a visitor who needs our help." To her amazement, Emma immediately reached for the girl, babbling excitedly. The child regarded the baby with a curious tilt of her head, then slowly raised her hand to touch Emma's outstretched fingers. The moment they touched, a strange calm seemed to settle over both children. Emma's tears dried instantly, and the older girl's trembling subsided. "You need dry clothes," Olivia said, trying to hide her confusion at the children's reaction to each other. "And something warm to drink. Are you hungry?" The girl nodded slightly, her eyes never leaving Emma's face. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Olivia asked again. The girl finally turned to look at her. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, seeming frustrated. "It's okay if you don't want to tell me," Olivia assured her. "You're safe here." She found a clean t-shirt that would serve as a nightgown for the child, and helped her change out of her wet clothes. As she did, she noticed several scratches on the girl's arms and legs, some fresh, others partially healed. "Did someone hurt you?" Olivia asked, a cold knot forming in her stomach. The girl shook her head firmly, then pointed toward the window, toward the forest beyond. "You were in the woods? In this storm?" Olivia couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "How did you get out there? Where do you live?" Again, the girl seemed to struggle with how to respond. Finally, she made a small, huffing sound of frustration and pointed directly at Emma. "You know Emma?" Olivia asked, bewildered. The girl nodded vigorously, then touched her own chest before pointing at Emma again. She repeated the gesture several times, growing more agitated with each repetition. "I don't understand," Olivia admitted, "but that's okay. Let's get you some hot chocolate and we can figure this out in the morning when the storm has passed." In the kitchen, Olivia heated milk on the gas stove, grateful that at least that didn't require electricity. The girl perched on a stool at the counter, watching Olivia's every movement with those unnerving amber eyes. Emma sat contentedly in her high chair, occasionally babbling at the stranger as if they were having a conversation. "Do you live nearby?" Olivia tried again, stirring cocoa powder into the warm milk. "Your parents must be worried sick." The girl's face clouded, and she looked down at her hands. When she looked up again, there were tears in her eyes. She shook her head slowly. "No parents." Olivia felt a pang of sympathy. "Are you? From the children's home in Blackridge? Did you run away?" Another head shake, more emphatic this time. "Here you go," Olivia said, setting a mug of hot chocolate before the child. "Be careful, it's hot." The girl sniffed the drink cautiously, then took a tentative sip. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she took another larger drink. A small smile, the first Olivia had seen, curved her lips. While the child drank, Olivia tried to make sense of the situation. A young girl, alone in the forest during a violent storm, with no explanation for how she got there or where she came from. No reports of missing children had circulated in the small community recently. Olivia would have heard. The nearest town was 20 miles away, much too far for a child this age to wander, especially in a storm. Something about the girl tugged at Olivia's memory. Something just beyond her grasp, like a word on the tip of her tongue. Those unusual amber eyes, the way she moved. Graceful but somehow cautious, as if constantly assessing her surroundings. The instant connection with Emma. "The wolves," Olivia whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. The girl's head snapped up, her eyes locking with Olivia's. Something flickered in their amber depths. Recognition, fear, hope. "The Wolf family," Olivia said more clearly. "The pups in the pit, you know them?" Slowly, deliberately, the girl nodded. Olivia's mind raced, trying to fit this new piece into the puzzle. Had this child also encountered the wolves? Had they helped her too somehow? Was she another lost soul they had guided to Olivia's door? Outside, the storm raged on, wind howling around the cabin's eaves like a chorus of unearthly voices. Emma had fallen asleep in her high chair, her head nodding forward onto her chest. The girl watched her with a protective intensity that seemed far too mature for her years. "Let's get some sleep," Olivia suggested, lifting Emma gently. "You can have the guest room. We'll figure everything out tomorrow." She led the girl to the small room adjacent to her own, where a twin bed with a patchwork quilt stood ready for visitors, though there had been few since Daniel's death. The girl climbed onto the bed but made no move to lie down, instead sitting cross-legged in the center of the mattress, watching Olivia with those unnervingly intent eyes. "Try to get some rest," Olivia said, setting a candle on the bedside table. "I'll be right next door if you need anything. You're safe here, I promise." The girl nodded once, solemnly, then reached out to touch Olivia's hand. Her fingers were warmer now, no longer trembling. Back in her own room, Olivia laid Emma in her crib and slumped onto her bed, exhaustion washing over her in waves. The events of the day seemed dreamlike in their strangeness. The storm, the mysterious child, the sense that something profound and inexplicable was unfolding around her. She must have drifted off despite her racing thoughts, because the next thing she knew, she was awakening to a sound, soft but persistent, coming from the guest room. Olivia sat up, disoriented. The storm had abated somewhat, though rain still pattered against the windows. The sound came again. Not crying, as she had first thought, but something else. Singing? No, not quite. A humming, melodic and haunting. She rose quietly, careful not to wake Emma, and moved to the door of the guest room. It stood slightly ajar, candlelight flickering from within. Olivia peered through the gap. The girl sat exactly as Olivia had left her, cross-legged on the bed. Her eyes were closed, her head tilted slightly back, and from her throat came that strange, beautiful humming. The same melody Olivia had hummed to the wolves, the same lullaby she sang to Emma each night. But how could the child know that tune? As if sensing Olivia's presence, the girl's eyes snapped open. The humming stopped abruptly. They stared at each other through the partially open door, a tableau frozen in candlelight and shadow. "Who are you?" Olivia whispered, the question barely audible. The girl's expression changed, determination replacing uncertainty. She slid from the bed and padded across the floor to stand before Olivia. With deliberate movements, she took Olivia's hand and placed it against her own chest, over her heart. Beneath Olivia's palm, the child's heart beat strong and steady, but fast, much faster than a human heart should beat. The rhythm was familiar somehow, reminiscent of... "Oh my God!" Olivia breathed, her hand jerking back involuntarily. "It can't be." The girl held her gaze steadily, neither confirming nor denying the impossible thought that had entered Olivia's mind. A cry from Emma's crib broke the moment. The baby was awake, fussing in the darkness. Olivia turned automatically toward her daughter, maternal instinct temporarily overriding her shock. When she had settled Emma and turned back, the girl was gone. "Hello?" Olivia called softly, stepping into the hallway. "Where are you?" The front door stood open, rain and wind gusting through the gap. Olivia rushed forward, heart pounding. "Wait!" she called into the storm. "Don't go! It's not safe!" On the porch steps, the girl paused, looking back over her shoulder. The oversized t-shirt Olivia had given her flapped around her small body like wings. For a moment, their eyes met across the rain-swept space. Olivia's filled with confusion and concern. The girl's with an ancient wisdom no child should possess. Then, with a grace that defied her apparent age, the girl leaped from the porch and vanished into the darkness. Olivia ran to the edge of the porch, straining to see through the curtain of rain. "Please, come back," she called. "I want to help you." A sound answered her, not a child's voice, but a long, mournful howl that echoed between the mountains. It was joined by another, then a third, a chorus of wolves singing to the storm-hidden moon. Olivia stood frozen, rain soaking her nightgown, as understanding dawned like a physical ache in her chest. The girl's amber eyes, her inability to speak, her instant connection with Emma, her knowledge of the lullaby. "Impossible," Olivia whispered, but the word held no conviction. In her crib, Emma had gone quiet. Turning back into the house, Olivia found her daughter standing, gripping the rails of her crib, eyes fixed on the open door. She was smiling, that same joyous smile she'd shown in the clearing. "You knew," Olivia said softly, lifting Emma into her arms. "Somehow, you knew all along." They stood together in the doorway, watching as the storm began to subside, the rain softening to a gentle mist. Through breaks in the clouds, stars emerged, casting silver light on the glistening forest. And there, at the edge of the trees, stood 4 wolves, 2 adults and 2 smaller forms. They watched the house with unblinking eyes, their fur silver in the starlight. One of the smaller wolves stepped forward, separated from the others. It was leaner than its sibling, with a distinctive patch of darker fur on its chest, exactly where the girl had placed Olivia's hand to feel her heartbeat. "It was you," Olivia whispered. "In the pit, and tonight—" The young wolf held her gaze for a long moment, then threw back its head in a howl. Not mournful this time, but triumphant. The others joined in, their voices blending in perfect harmony. Without thinking, Olivia began to hum the lullaby, the melody rising to join the wolves' song. Emma babbled along, tiny hands reaching toward their nighttime visitors. For several heartbeats, human and wolf voices twined together in the night air. A bridge between worlds that should never have touched but somehow had. Then, as one, the wolves turned and melted into the forest, leaving only silence and starlight behind. "Come on, baby," Olivia murmured, closing the door. "Time to sleep." But as she tucked Emma back into her crib, a glint of something caught her eye. Something on the floor beside the bed that hadn't been there before. Olivia bent to retrieve it. A small, smooth stone lay in her palm, polished by water and time. In the candlelight, it seemed to shift colors, gray to amber to silver and back again, and etched into its surface was a perfect paw print, impossibly small and delicate. Olivia closed her fingers around the stone, feeling its warmth against her skin, a warmth that seemed to pulse with the same rapid rhythm as the girl's heart. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty room, knowing somehow that her words would be heard. Emma sighed in her sleep, one hand reaching out as if to touch something only she could see. Olivia placed the stone on the windowsill, where moonlight now streamed through the clearing sky. Tomorrow she would try to make sense of what had happened. Tomorrow she would question whether the storm and exhaustion had caused her to hallucinate, to see impossible things in the shadows of her grief-haunted home. But tonight, Olivia chose to believe in a world where boundaries were thinner than humans imagined, where animals might walk as children in times of need, where the bond between mother and child transcended species. Tonight, she chose to believe in magic. Morning arrived with a freshly washed world, puddles reflecting the clear blue sky like scattered mirrors across Olivia's yard. The storm had downed several branches and scattered pine needles everywhere, but the cabin stood undamaged, solid against the elements as it had for generations. Olivia moved through her morning routine mechanically, making coffee, preparing Emma's breakfast, all while trying to process the events of the night before. In the harsh light of day, it seemed impossible. A dream, perhaps, or a story she told herself to make sense of a lost child's brief appearance in their lives. But the stone remained on the windowsill, its etched paw print clearly visible in the morning sun. And Emma kept looking toward the guest room, babbling questions in her baby language that Olivia couldn't answer. The sound of tires on gravel announced Jackson's arrival. Olivia watched through the window as he stepped from his truck, surveying the storm damage with a critical eye before making his way to her door. "You two weather the storm, okay?" he asked as Olivia invited him in. His weathered face was creased with genuine concern. "We're fine," she assured him, pouring him a cup of coffee. "Lost power for a while, but it came back on around dawn." Jackson nodded, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Good to hear. Some folks down in the valley weren't so lucky. Trees down, flash flooding in the low areas." He glanced around the kitchen, his eyes pausing briefly on Emma, who was methodically smashing banana into her high-chair tray. "Anything unusual happen up here?" The question was casual, but something in his tone made Olivia look at him more closely. "Why do you ask?" Jackson shrugged, not quite meeting her eyes. "No reason, just checking in." He sipped his coffee, then set the mug down with deliberate care. "Though there was something strange reported down at the Hendersons' place." "Oh," Olivia tried to keep her voice neutral. Their oldest boy, Tyler, swears he saw a child running through their back field during the worst of the storm. A little girl, he said, moving faster than any human should be able to move." Jackson's eyes finally met hers. "Heading in this direction." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. Children have active imaginations. That they do, Jackson agreed easily, especially in these mountains. This place has a way of showing people things. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "My grandfather used to say that the boundaries thin during storms, that sometimes the things that live in between can cross over, just for a little while." "Things that live in between," Olivia repeated softly. Jackson's gaze drifted to the windowsill, where the stone sat catching the sunlight. Without a word, he reached for it, turning it over in his calloused palm. "Pretty little thing," he commented. "Where'd you find it?" Olivia hesitated, torn between the truth and a safer lie. "It was a gift," she said finally. Jackson nodded as if this made perfect sense. He returned the stone to its place on the windowsill and finished his coffee in silence. As he was leaving, he paused on the porch, looking out toward the forest. "My grandfather had another saying," he offered. "He said that once you've been touched by the in-between, it never really leaves you. That you start to see the world differently. The spaces where things don't quite match up. The moments when something wild looks out through domestic eyes." He turned to Olivia, his expression unreadable. "Be careful with that gift of yours. Some things, once invited in, can't easily be sent away." Before Olivia could respond, he was gone, boots crunching on the gravel as he returned to his truck. She stood on the porch long after the sound of his engine had faded, staring at the forest edge where the wolves had stood the night before. Was Jackson warning her or offering guidance? Did he know more than he was saying? Emma's cheerful babbling called her back inside. Her daughter sat in her high chair, banana forgotten, pointing excitedly at something outside the kitchen window. Olivia moved to look, but saw nothing unusual, just her garden, slightly battered by the storm, and the forest beyond. "What is it, baby?" she asked, wiping Emma's sticky hands with a damp cloth. Emma continued pointing and chattering, clearly seeing something her mother could not. Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. "Jackson's right," she murmured. "Once you've been touched by the in-between—" She lifted Emma from the high chair and held her close, breathing in the sweet, familiar scent of her baby's hair. Whatever strangeness had entered their lives, this solid, warm connection was real and precious. For the next few days, life returned to its normal rhythm. Olivia tended her garden, sang to Emma, worked on her illustrations for a children's book commissioned by a small publishing house in the city. But something had changed, subtle yet undeniable. She found herself pausing often, head tilted as if listening for a sound just beyond normal hearing. She studied Emma's face when the baby stared into seemingly empty corners, wondering what her daughter could see that she could not. And each night she placed the stone on the windowsill, a silent invitation or acknowledgement. She wasn't sure which. On the 5th night after the storm, Olivia dreamed. She stood in the clearing where they had found the trapped wolf pups, but it was transformed. Moonlight bathed everything in silver, making the ordinary magical. The pit was gone, replaced by a perfect circle of white stones. In the center of the circle stood the girl with amber eyes. She was different somehow, more substantial, more present than she had been in the cabin. When she smiled, her teeth seemed just slightly too sharp for a human child. "You came," the girl said, her voice like wind through pine needles, both ancient and young. "You can speak," Olivia replied, surprised. "Here, I can," the girl nodded, gesturing to the moonlit clearing around them. "In the between place, the rules are different." "The between place?" Olivia looked around, noticing now how the colors seemed too vibrant, the shadows too deep. "Am I dreaming?" The girl tilted her head, considering. "Yes and no. Your body sleeps, but your spirit walks the boundary. Few humans can do this without help." She stepped closer, amber eyes glowing in the moonlight. "But you are different. You heard our cries when others would have passed by. You risked yourself for strangers. You saw me for what I am." "And what are you?" Olivia whispered, though she already knew the answer. The girl smiled, and in that smile was something wild and unknowable. "I am the one you saved. The smaller pup, the one who was sinking deeper. My brother was stronger. He would have survived even without your help. But I was failing." "How is this possible?" Olivia gestured to the girl's human form. "This transformation." "Old magic," the girl said simply. "Almost forgotten, but not quite. On certain nights, under certain moons, those of us who remember the old ways can walk in your world wearing a different skin." She looked down at her hands, examining them as if they were strange to her. "It is difficult, painful sometimes, and dangerous if we are discovered. But why risk it? Why come to my cabin?" The girl's expression grew solemn. "To warn you." A chill ran through Olivia. "Warn me about what?" "There are others in these mountains. Others who watch the boundary between your world and the wild places. Some protect it, some do not." The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. "Some hunt those who cross." "Hunt? You mean hunters? Poachers?" The girl shook her head impatiently. "Not ordinary hunters with guns and traps. These are older. They have hunted my kind since before your cities rose, before your kind forgot how to speak with ours." Olivia felt fear twist in her stomach. "Are they human?" "They were once," the girl said. "Now they are something else, something caught between, neither fully human nor fully wild. And they are drawn to those who cross boundaries, who bridge worlds." "Like you," Olivia said. "And like Emma," the girl replied softly. Olivia's fear crystallized into terror. "Emma? What does my daughter have to do with this?" The girl stepped forward, placing a small hand on Olivia's arm. Her touch was warm, solid, impossible for a dream. "Haven't you wondered why she wasn't afraid of us? Why she seemed to understand when even you did not? Your daughter was born with one foot in each world, Olivia. She sees what others cannot. She hears what others cannot." "That's impossible," Olivia protested, though even as she spoke, she remembered all the times Emma had seemed to communicate with animals, had known things she shouldn't have known. "Is it?" The girl's eyes seemed to look straight through her. "Think of her father." "Daniel?" Olivia frowned. "What about him? Did he not speak to the animals in his own way? Did they not trust him, allow him closer than they would allow others? It was true. Daniel had possessed an uncanny ability to approach even the most skittish creatures. It was what had made him such an exceptional wildlife photographer. Animals that fled from others would stand calmly as Daniel crept within feet of them, his camera capturing moments of wildness few humans ever witnessed. "He called it patience," Olivia said weakly. "Good fieldcraft." The girl smiled knowingly. Perhaps he truly did not know what gift he carried. But he passed it to your daughter, strengthened in her blood. And that makes her valuable to those who hunt the boundary crossers, those who feed on the power of the in-between. "You're saying my baby is in danger?" Olivia's maternal instinct flared, hot and protective. "From what? Who?" "They have many names in many languages. Some call them skinwalkers, others Wendigo. My people call them the Hollow Ones, for they are empty inside, always hungry for the magic they lost when they chose to hunt their own kind." "This can't be real," Olivia said, backing away. "This is just a dream, a nightmare brought on by stress and grief and the stone I gave you," the girl interrupted. "Keep it with her, always. It holds protection, not enough to hide her completely, but enough to shield her brightest light from their searching eyes." The moonlit clearing began to waver, like a reflection in disturbed water. The girl's form blurred at the edges. "Our time grows short," she said urgently. "Listen carefully, Olivia. Trust Jackson. He knows more than he says, and his bloodline has guarded these mountains for generations. Do not go into the deep forest at night, especially not during the dark moon. And if you see a white stag with eyes like embers, run. Do not look back, do not hesitate, just run." "Wait," Olivia cried as the girl began to fade. "I don't even know your name." A smile, both sad and wild. "Names have power, but you may call me Lyra. It is close enough to what my mother calls me in her tongue." "Lyra," Olivia repeated. "How will I find you again?" "If we need help." "The stone," Lyra said, her voice growing distant. "Hold it and sing our song under moonlight. I will hear." Her form was almost transparent now, the forest visible through her fading silhouette. "Remember, Olivia, the boundary is thinner than humans believe, and once crossed, it can never be uncrossed." With those words, the dream shattered like glass, fragments of moonlight and forest spinning away into darkness. Olivia woke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in her bed. Her nightgown was soaked with sweat, her heart pounding against her ribs. Through the window, The first pale light of dawn was breaking over the mountains. "Just a dream," she whispered, pressing shaking hands to her face. "Just a strange, vivid dream." But when she lowered her hands, she noticed something that stopped her breath. A small, perfect paw print pressed into the sheet beside her, as if a wolf pup had walked across her bed while she slept. In her crib, Emma slept peacefully, one hand curled around the stone that Olivia had placed on the windowsill the night before. A stone that should have been impossible for her to reach. Jackson arrived later that morning, his truck loaded with lumber and tools. He'd mentioned something about reinforcing her porch, a project Olivia had neither requested nor particularly needed, but she was grateful for his presence nonetheless. As he worked, hammering and measuring in the late summer sunshine, Olivia sat on the steps watching him, Emma playing contentedly at her feet. She wanted to tell him about her dream, to ask if he knew anything about Hollow Ones or Skinwalkers or Boundary Crossers. But the words stuck in her throat, sounding insane even in her own mind. Finally, as Jackson paused to wipe sweat from his forehead, Olivia found her courage. "Jackson," she began hesitantly, "do you believe in things that don't quite fit into the normal world? Things from old stories that might actually be real?" His hands stilled on the hammer, his back still turned to her. For a long moment he said nothing, and Olivia feared she'd overstepped some invisible boundary. Then, slowly, he turned to face her. His weathered face was solemn, his eyes holding none of their usual gruff humor. "My grandfather," he said carefully, "used to tell me that these mountains are old. Older than the names we've given them, older than the roads we've cut through them. They remember a time when the world was different, when the boundaries between things weren't so fixed." He set down his hammer with deliberate care. "Why do you ask?" Olivia hesitated, then pulled the stone from her pocket. She'd retrieved it from Emma's crib that morning, intending to keep it close until she understood more about its supposed protective properties. "Because of this," she said, holding it out to him, "and because of dreams that don't feel like dreams, and because I think Emma might be special in a way I don't understand." Jackson took the stone, examining it closely. His expression revealed nothing, but Olivia noticed how carefully he handled it, as if it were something precious and perhaps dangerous. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice neutral. "It was a gift," Olivia repeated her answer from before. "From someone I helped." Jackson nodded slowly. "Someone from the forest?